What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Fantasy Football Weekly. Got Kevin Tompkins, got Keith Fleming, got a surprise guest that we're going to be talking about as soon as we're done with this. And let's just bring the guy on. Keith Fleming was talking all sorts of shit about him last week, and he called me up, and he's like, you know what? That goddamn Keith Fleming.
It's like Beetlejuice. You say Nate Markham's name 3 times, it just shows up.
Well, you just gave it away. You just ruined the surprise. You just ruined the surprise. You had to take the spotlight again.
It's not the first time I've wasted the good surprise, so
right, well,
sorry.
Let's bring
I guess we got to bring him on now.
You Keith.
I mean, if they had listened last week, they would have known who. It was only one person I was talking shit about. It was Nate. So,
let's be honest, no one's listening to you. It's a good time to get a beer, go to the bathroom. Keith's gonna go on about the Falcons winning.
I'm
6
like
games
the cooler match at WrestleMania that everybody goes and gets so popcorn.
Yep.
You're the new album for all the bands that play that are supposed to be there for their old shit. Metallica's new album, and
it's like you're here for Bon Jovi's 2024 songs.
Yeah, we're gonna dip into the new album.
Yeah, and a mass exodus.
Everybody's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Dude, welcome back. You've been busy. I think I was hyping you up last week. Is that you're one of the few people in this space that goes 100% in fantasy football, and then you literally just switch it on like nobody's business to fantasy baseball. How's that been treating you?
Oh, that light's dim. It's one of those real slow ramp ups. I've done a lot of drafts and trying to get familiar with the player pool, and it's a lot. And I mean, this year's been big because we at Reliever Recon purchased Closer Monkey, which was a pretty big site for. Yeah, so now there's a little more pressure. But good news is the other guys can carry the slack, and all I have to do is just try a little harder than what I've been doing. So we'll see.
Well, first of all, I'm loving how you're shifting around your office to emphasize baseball during one time of year and then football the next time of year. Very, very cool. We got Wendy in the chat saying, "Oh my God, all my favorite people all in one place." Here we are.
And happy National Women's Day, by the way, as well.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Speaking of Wendy, go back and listen to our show on Dynasty 365. Wendy was a guest talking about her experiences in the combine with Stacey Perez and Tyler Heil, and then they get into some Dynasty. Just a fantastic listen. Listen to the Fantasy and Frames podcast, or go over to our YouTube channel. Check that out. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you're notified whenever Fantasy and Frames puts out any fantasy football content. And I say any, I probably should say every, but every and any, because it's all good.
You didn't share, though, that Wendy took a picture with the Falcons helmet just for me at the combine because she loves me. Thought for sure Fantasy and Frames would retweet that, but no. I guess it's because the Falcons said it. All right, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm going to try to avoid as best as possible this week any Falcons slander just for you.
Yeah,
I didn't say it. You just did. That's not me. That's you. That's not me.
Last week you did, and then just said I didn't say anything. I go, you just said 28-3.
Exactly.
Victorious.
Yeah, well, gotta do what you gotta do. Ratings, but I digress. not for this week. Let's go around the frame zone, just check on and see how everybody's doing. Since you're talking here, Keith, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm a little depressed just thinking about how you text me and, hey, can we swap till Friday night? And immediately knowing I didn't have anything going on because I'm old and I'm usually in my pajamas by this time on Friday. And then even more mad that I'm such a nerd that I'm mad that, The Rock's on right now. Him and you got the tribal chief Roman Reigns and Seth and Cody are there. And I'm having to tape it to watch it later. So definitely shows how much I enjoy being here because I'm pretty jacked about SmackDown tonight.
Yeah, you get the VCR going.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta tape it.
Tape over last week's.
Right, exactly. The wedding VCR tape is
going. Kevin Tompkins, man, how are you doing? What is new with you? How are things? How did the first show with the Pokemon stream on Twitch and your new YouTube channel go?
I'm going to be doing that on Monday. Kind of a couple things got in the way, technical wise with my OBS, but I'll be doing that
I
on
love it.
Monday. Getting ready for free agency eve here. Because it's kind of the calm before the storm. We're starting to get some stuff trickling in now, but the dam is about to break the next couple days here. So getting into the weeds, getting excited, working on some stuff in the back end here, but very excited for what is to come in the next few days and into the tampering period.
Wendy's right here, just rubbing it in. I'm watching SmackDown.
Thanks,
Of course
Wendy.
she is.
Appreciate
Of
that.
course she is. Nate, I know you've been out of the fantasy football space for a little bit, but I know you're always watching things NFL. Is there anything, and let's just jump into free agency, do some NFL stuff, news and notes and all that jazz. Anything jump out to you in NFL free agency that you've seen that just is blowing your mind, or is more of like, oh, yeah, that was expected?
I mean, I wouldn't say blowing my mind, but the wide receiver pool, which used to be deep and plentiful, is now the basically dried up and nothing but shit left over.
Good
No
thing
offense
there's
to
an
the
amazing
criminal.
rookie class coming in.
That's
So-
very true. He didn't
It
say
shows
how's
how-
the draft.
Yeah, it shows how important the wide receiver position is, like from a league standpoint, where the guys that you're targeting, where like the Mike Evans and T. Higgins are already getting locked up, Michael Pittman are getting locked up. You're staring down the barrel of Curtis Samuel getting a bag because like Darnell Mooney, Tyler Boyd, like the
Allen
corpse of Michael
Robinson.
Thomas.
I think wide receiver is going to be like running back has been for the last decade eventually, where you're going to have the guys that get really high paid, but I think you're going to see more and more teams, and we've seen this recently. Like, look at the Packers. Their whole basically receiving core are guys that have been in the league 2-3 years, and they're going to draft them, and then maybe they pay one of them, and the rest of them they're just going to let walk. And I think receiver pay is going to go down other than those elite guys, and you're going to have a lot of free agency classes like this because obviously the guys that are studs, they're going to keep. But outside of that, you're going to have a lot of guys that are just kind of mid.
The worst thing, I think, and the best thing, obviously the best thing is that, you can win a Super Bowl without having elite wide receivers. Rashee Rice, obviously. Is
We
gonna be good.
know.
Hold on. Listen, give me 28.3 seconds to get my point across.
Oh, wow.
Very good.
That was sly. I like that.
Thanks.
That was very good.
Now I have to talk a little bit longer because I don't know how 28 seconds goes. But
Well, I killed 4 for you.
Thank you. Exactly. But it's also like gives me a little bit of concern that maybe there wasn't an emphasis for teams like Kansas City and Green Bay, for instance, like you said, they had a successful season and none of which I think really elite talent, just all good role fillers. And I think that's kind of one of the things that a good team can get by on is having people in specific roles that are conducive to their style of play. We'll see.
Mahomes has won back-to-back Super Bowls with like the 7 doors. Again, Rashee Rice is good, but I mean, we've even seen Kelsey is slowing down a little bit. And I just think it proves when you're that good, like I will bow down to Patrick Mahomes now. I was somebody that thought he had a lot of talent, didn't think he was like the best quarterback and on path for all this. If you look what he's done the last 2 years where they said, okay, the most dangerous weapon in the NFL, we're getting rid of him. Okay. So you can't, take the top off of this offense. And instead they just turned him into like Brady 2.0 where he'll dink and dunk you all the way down the field. And that is terrifying because he's going to make plays, when he has to, but he can just beat you. Like it's a slow death now, which at least the old way, there was a kill shot early and it was over. Now it's just repetitive, like 9-10 play drives. It's really impressive what he's doing.
Well, like imagine once the Chiefs get like adults in the room at wide receiver because you're looking at Sky Moore, Justin Watson. They got they cut MVS, future Carolina Panther Marquez Valdez-Scantling, by the way. Look, I mean, there's a ton of role. Like they could go out and draft Roman Wilson and bring in Darnell Mooney, and that is perfect. That's a market upgrade from what they had. Adding to Rashee Rice, like they could do that. Patrick Mahomes doesn't miss a beat. And we're back in the same exact place we were, we are 1 year from now. We're talking about, Mahomes upgraded the wide receiver room to the defense that they still have, and they ran away with it. Like that's definitely in the cards. And it's not going to take a lot of money to do that, to bring in a Darnell Mooney. You can spend, a decent day 2 pick on a Roman Wilson and you're off to the
Lab
races.
McConkey, those Texas receivers. Like, imagine putting one of those guys with 4.28 or 4.3 speed. I mean, I think this receiver class is really deep, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes throwing to you. That's going to help any receiver a good bit.
Let's talk about that for a second. The quarterback situation and helping receivers. News today came out that Russell Wilson had an impromptu visit, whatever you want to call that, with the New York Giants before traveling to Pittsburgh to talk about the quarterback position there. And I guess the question I want to start off with here is, which of these landing spots for Russell Wilson is going to be more of a detriment to the overall skill player, all of the overall skill players on each team? Like, we know that Russell Wilson has a great deep ball, so that would help somebody like in Pittsburgh, like a George Pickens, whose ADOT is one of the highest ones on the Steelers wide receiving group. But, Deontay Johnson, although he is a speculative trade candidate, we don't know what's going to happen there. But there are other options there at the wide receiver position that maybe it's, Russell Wilson isn't a good fit there. So is he more of a detriment to a team like the Steelers or a team like the Giants, who are slowly starting to build up that wide receiving core, a la Wan'Dale Robinson and potential other draft picks like a Roma Dunze, who's kind of being projected by most mock drafters to go there in the NFL draft? Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I mean, you're kind of rebuilding that entire offense right now because, look, Saquon Barkley, might be long for, it's doubtful he comes back to the Giants. You drafted Jalen Hyatt. You still got Darius Slayton. You still got Wan'Dale Robinson. You've got an aging Darren Waller. So, for Russell Wilson to go there, I think it's almost purgatory, if you ask me. I think he could land in Pittsburgh and be fine. I'm a little worried about, maybe they hide Russell Wilson a little bit. I certainly don't think Russell Wilson's anywhere close to what he was in Seattle, but he's got enough weapons there with Deontay Johnson. If he sticks around, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, they got a decent running game. Now they have Arthur Smith as coordinator, where that could be one of those, the sum of the parts is, better than what they already add them up, whatever the saying is. But I don't mind Pittsburgh. If he lands with the Giants, got a lot of questions about, Brian Daboll had a lot of goodwill when he took the roster he had 2 years ago and brought that team to the playoffs. And now the shine's coming off of Daboll a little bit with, if he's got, his hand in player personnel. Cause right now, like, what excites you about the Giants offense, especially if Barkley's gone?
Wan'Dale. That would be the extent of my excitement there.
Like our generation's Jarvis Landry, he'll get 150 targets and catch 120 passes for 700 yards.
Well, the receptions though for a PPR would eventually add up. There
you go. Wide receiver 26.
Exactly. Another potential landing spot that's been rumored is the Vegas Raiders. I don't really know what to make of that. I see Vegas kind of wanting to go, younger and maybe draft a quarterback there. But let's stay with the AFC West. The Broncos re-signed Tim Patrick to a 1-year deal coming off of back-to-back seasons with a season-ending injury. Nate, this is your team's division. Let's start with you. Mm-hmm. The Broncos are offloading a lot of players. We talk about, IDP here at Fantasy and Frames. Justin Simmons, somebody who's been there forever, was released. There's talk that Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton can be on the move. Is this for fantasy purposes? And I want to emphasize that versus reality or real football rather. For fantasy purposes, what excites you about this Broncos team, both, I guess, on the defensive side of the ball as well as on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah.
Tough question tonight, huh?
Yeah. Well, let's say that I guess if there's one thing is down the stretch for Javonte, involvement was greater. So, if there was anybody holding on and thinking that there was the buying opportunity, the buying window was wide open, and it didn't cost as much for some people that bought in and were going to buy in, were not going to sell low. But I don't think too many people were holding like death gripping to Javonte Williams and so. But again, that the rest of the team dynamic around him, something tells me there will be plenty of 8 men in the box if you don't have Cortland Sutton, if you don't have Jerry Jeudy, if you, you have Tim Patrick, but do you have anybody? It's right. A mess in Denver for sure. I don't know defensively. I mean,
Singleton,
Jewel. I mean, but
maybe Jewel.
I don't think that's any different. My opinion hasn't changed from where it was last year on those same guys. That hasn't necessarily, I'm not more excited about either one of those two guys. They're going to get you what they're going to get you. Maybe the offense being worse means they're on the field a little bit more, and maybe there's a potential for a higher tackle floor, but there's not exactly correlation to that at all times.
Sticking with the AFC West, let's go to the Chiefs. They re-signed Drew Tranquil. We had Gary Davenport on Shoot the Gap on Wednesday, and we had mentioned Drew Tranquil potentially re-signing in Kansas City, or why did he go to Kansas City to begin with? And Gary very eloquently took off his wedding ring, and he said, that's why I wanted, alluding to he wanted a Super Bowl ring. We saw him play very well for fantasy purposes when Nick Bolton went down. With Willie Gay, also still a free agent, any chance that people should be trying to get some shares of Drew Tranquil in the chances that they kind of move him to Willie Gay's spot more so than being the direct backup to Nick Bolton?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he'll do. I think he'll definitely take more of the Willie Gay role. They would love to have both him and Bolton on the field at the same time. He has a different skill set than Bolton, and with I would say a lack of depth at linebacker, there's not much in the way of stopping him. They're not going to bring back Willie Gay. That's our foregone conclusion, I believe. Unless he decides to take a significant, hometown discount, which he's already said he doesn't want to do. So goodbye, Willie Gay. Thank you for the championships and all and your help, but I think he's a replaceable player.
Let's switch it over a little bit to the AFC South. Keith, the Texans brought back Dalton Schultz on a 3-year, $36 million deal, 23.5 of it guaranteed. Is it getting to the point with the Houston Texans, in your opinion, that whether it's for fantasy or for DFS, you want all pieces of this offense regardless?
I'm a little nervous. And I will say the last time I was nervous about a rookie QB who had unbelievable numbers, it was Justin Herbert, and he actually went out the second year, was even better. But I also kind of had these feelings about Jalen Hurts after his year last year that I am a little worried there's going to be some regression with this Texans offense. They were unbelievably good when you think about the situation. And, now next year, I don't know when Tank Dell is going to be 100%. I think defenses are obviously going to single in a little bit more on Nico Collins. They're going to have a full year of seeing what Stroud has done well and hasn't. And, I'm not saying there's any signs that Stroud's not going to continue to be great, but just he barely turned the ball over at all this year behind kind of a shaky offensive line and not exactly a lot of weapons. So I think the Schultz move was a great move. Obviously, that was one of his favorite weapons. He torched the Falcons when the Texans played us this year. But I am a little cautious about buying too much into Texans players just because I think, like, whether it be a draft, an auction, dynasty, whatever, they're really high because Stroud had such a great rookie year. But at the same point, it's a second-year guy. It's a second-year head coach. I just want to see a little bit more all in on him from a fantasy perspective.
And one of the best parts about the Texans is that, Bobby Slowick was in on a lot of these head coaching vacancies, and now you get another year of him with CJ Stroud, which is going to help everything. If he had to, go with another offensive coordinator, maybe get some growing pains. Usually with these rookie quarterbacks, you look at him and go, all right, well, he took his lumps in year one, had a good year, but you're hoping for an efficiency bump. Maybe there's not as much of an efficiency bump you can take in year two when you are already as good as you were in year one. Now, you still got Tank Dell, Nico Collins. All these weapons are going to help. You get Saquon Barkley in there, you get a running back in there worth his salt, then, this offense is looking pretty 49ers-esque in terms of efficiency. So maybe if you add a running back, Nico Collins right now in best ball is going off of the 1-2 turn. That's kind of what you're playing with, where maybe there's not a lot of room for him to pull out, to provide at that ADP. But this offense could be like the next 49ers in terms of efficiency too.
Much tougher schedule, though, which is the other thing I want to always remind people. They had one of the worst records. So they had a very easy schedule last year. They're going to be playing all first-place teams this year.
You get to play the Titans twice.
That's fair.
Sorry, Tennessee Titans fans, but it's true. You know it. Kevin, let's stick with you, and I'm going to ask you two questions here. One is probably the most important question. of the night, and the second one is the least important one of the night. Most
Duality of man, I like that.
Yep. Most important question: how much is Zach Ertz going to ball out with the Washington Commanders this year? Second question: do we care about Mike Evans re-signing in Tampa Bay? Being very sarcastic.
I mean, to Mike Evans, I care who the quarterback is. I care who's throwing the ball.
He doesn't.
I mean, no, he doesn't. I mean, it's funny because, his agent was saying, we want to go somewhere where we can win a championship and get paid. Well, he got one of those because he got paid. I don't know if you're winning a title in Tampa. But Zach Ertz, man, this Washington Commanders thing really just befuddles me because you have all this all this cap space. You have a chance at getting a quarterback that can lead your franchise into the next kind of era with the new owner, and then you waste a good surprise on this retread head coach who's getting a second shot now, and now you're bringing in Zach Ertz. Like, it's not very exciting to see what Washington is doing, like from like an optics point. Like, Dan Quinn only gives you so much excitement. Cliff Kingsbury only gives you so much excitement to this team. Now they're going to likely lose Curtis Samuel, so you're looking at Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Zach Ertz.
But Jorge, wouldn't you rather have stability and improvement than excitement? And I do think that what they're setting up, like Dan Quinn was a pretty good head coach. I think he learned the things, obviously, that did not work out, like running the football when you're up 28-3 in our Super Bowl. But he's a great defensive mind, which is what happened to Washington last year. Like, their defense just fell apart. I think Clint's, depending on who they get at QB, I kind of like it. Like I said last week, I'm high on McLaurin. It's a lot like what the Falcons did with Morris. Everybody was a little disappointed, including myself, because Raheem Morris was not sexy. But I think it was the right, coach. And I think looking at the landscape, by the time Washington ended up making this decision, I don't hate the Dan Quinn hiring. I actually think in a division that's not exactly loaded right now, I don't think it would take much for Washington to kind of turn this thing around, especially when you have somebody with experience instead of, the hot named OC or DC that who knows what they're going to do with a head coaching job.
For me, I think about the hires that they've had in Washington and looking at the, level of competition within the division. For me, the name that I'm most excited about is not Cliff Kingsbury. It's not Dan Quinn. It's Anthony Lynn, the new running backs coach, who had a lot of success with setting up the running game with the Chargers, was formerly just with the 49ers this past year, had success in Detroit when he was there after he was let go by the Chargers. So he had made a lot of success in Buffalo way back before he became the Chargers head coach with LaShawn McCoy. So if the Commanders find a way to kind of restart the running game, they have Brian Robinson there. Is he the long-term future at the running back position? I don't know. But, the coaching at that position, I think, can help to offset a lot of maybe negatives that this offense could have, especially with the rookie quarterback playing the level of competition that they will within the division, who they all have great defenses and secondaries, and any potential struggles this rookie quarterback might have that could cause the Commanders to lean on the running game.
Williams is gone. Who do you want, May or Daniels?
I want Daniels.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Everybody hates Drake May today, at least.
I don't.
We're gonna get into that. But are you talking about for fantasy, or are you talking about for the?
No, I'm talking about as a Commanders fan. Like, who do you think? Because it looks like what I was telling everybody from the get go. They're not going to pass on Caleb Williams. They passed on Patrick Mahomes a few years earlier. They're not taking that chance. So May or Daniels is there. Who do you think is going to help turn that franchise around quicker? Who's going to be a better fit for what you have, et cetera, in place?
So for the NFL, I kind of, and this is going to be fitting considering I have been kind of anti this player for a lot of the off season, but I kind of want Drake May. I want the stability there. I like the fact that this guy can take a beating and play very well. Is sneaky, mobile. One of the things I like to look at whenever I'm researching a player is looking at not just how well they perform under ideal conditions, but when they're under pressure. And this guy is one of the better prospects or rookies coming in this draft that can handle pressure in terms of a completion percentage, in terms of making excellent throws, high NFL passer rating or quarterback passer rating. So you like that, but you saw that with Jaden Daniels as well. But I feel like there might be too much asked of Daniels that can he actually hold up versus a Drake May, who I think can show that he has shown that he can hold up playing at Carolina. For fantasy, I want Jaden Daniels. I give you the scrambling,
the rushing, yeah.
Give me all that. Which kind of brings us to our next topic here for today's show. Fantasy football versus reality football. I'm gonna.
We need some game show music. Come on, I'm disappointed in you.
I know. Next time, I promise. Let's give 4 scenarios here. Let's talk about running backs first, and let's talk about wide receivers second. If you were a fantasy manager, and we're talking about things from both a fantasy and a reality point of view, for a running back, would you rather have an incoming rookie running back on a bad team due to competition, or a bad team with a lack of competition at the position? Conversely, would you want a player that's maybe not as talented on a good team without competition, or not as talented player on a good team with competition? I told you guys are going to hate me that I didn't send a show sheet for this show ahead of time. So just let me.
I feel like I'm taking the freaking SAT again. Is this like more likely, neutral?
Right.
So I just want to make sure I understand the question. You're asking like, would you rather have a running back on a good team who there is a bunch of competition, but he's more talented, or would you rather have a running back on a good team and there's not any competition, but he's not that talented? He's just got opportunity, basically. Is that
what I'm trying to parse out here is basically, are you looking for situations and landing spots for fantasy that you have a really good player, but he's, the third in the pecking order, so therefore you're banking on talent will eventually show up one day? Or do you want the Blake Bortles effect where the player is, so average, and then the last 10 minutes of the game or 5 minutes of the game, he goes Blake Bortles and Allen Robinson?
That's the Marcus Mariota effect, by the way, 2 years ago for the Falcons.
Or Rashad Penny last year.
Like, who are you more interested in for fantasy purposes? Are you just going full talent? I mean, and again, it depends on when you're drafting, right? If you're going in
the league too, right? Like for me, if it's dynasty, I'm gonna want to go more on talent. And I mean, you're already right, like trusting your judgment so much in a dynasty league compared to a regular season draft. Anyway, that if I think somebody's really good, I don't care if he's the second or third string guy. Like I believe in the talent. You can probably get him for basically nothing, so you're going to take him. If it's a standard league, I would much rather have the guy with an opportunity or, an easy path to being the guy, because I mean, Kevin's the king of this. I believe now in running backs, just get running backs that are going to have a chance to get snaps. At that point, they're pretty much all the same outside of those top 5 or 10, which are almost impossible to figure out who they're going to be year in and year out.
Yeah, like I want talent at running back. There is no such thing as guaranteed touches. As much as we want to try to construct this, and outside of the first round guys who we can kind of pencil in, like Jonathan Taylor, was such a guaranteed. He'll come back. Zach Moss pretty much was fantasy relevant for the first 7-8 weeks of the season, and then obviously Taylor came back and was fine, but you look at all these running back situations, like Austin Eckler was top 6 picks last year, and he was out for the beginning of the year. Joshua Kelly was an abject just failure at every single metric, and Austin Eckler was running back 27, and now he's a free agent, and he's basically going to end up on the Eagles as like Kenny Gainwell plus. Like that's where he's at right now. But as far as like guaranteed touches, that's like the biggest fallacy. So that's why I'm drafting Jalen Warren in the 9th round yet again this year. I'm going to be drafting all these guys in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, finding my Jamal Williams.
Smith calling plays. Whoever's the most talented guy, we know they're probably not going to get the ball.
I'm drafting both. The Najee Harris price last year was terrible. Yeah. I didn't draft hardly any of him. But in the big board drafts, I'm like 30% Najee Harris right now. The price is right. Arthur Smith is there. They want to run the ball.
They're going to run.
I'm fine with it.
I'm with you.
Yeah, and if you look at really, I mean, any of the positions where you're talking about inferior talent with an opportunity to perform. Running back is probably at the top of that, just because wide receivers, touches or targets are earned much more than I think touches are earned at running back. But
Right.
Kevin's exactly right. I think it's just as who was, oh man, it's 2 or 3 years ago. The opportunity was there, and
Mike Davis.
Mike Davis is exactly who it is.
I was gonna
Mike
say Trey
Davis is
Sermon,
exactly
remember?
He was a fifth round pick in 2021.
Mike
Everybody
Davis.
said he was guaranteed for
Yep.
250 touches. And then
Yep.
Cordell Patterson found the fountain of youth.
Yep. And if you look at every statistical, look at this, I was guilty of the same thing. Every running back that has touched it had at least 200 touches, has always finished within the RB 22. And when everything was predicated on the idea of every running back that has had at least X amount of touches, and we just assumed lead back situation, very little depth at the position, very little, I would say, hurdles to overcome, must equate to 200. Now, that's also kind of an outlier in the fact that you knew exactly who I was talking about, which does mean maybe it's less likely that it's a complete bust when that situation arises, but not really, because it was just so blown out of proportion.
Trey
Very good
Sermon,
job,
Elijah
Kevin.
Mitchell for the Niners.
Alexander Madison last year.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing.
Yep.
Every year
All
we'll
right.
have that.
So does your answer change, for wide receivers now in terms of your draft philosophy, whether it's in a dynasty startup or for in season?
No, I think it's even more so a wide receiver, because to what Nate was getting to, wide receivers, you got to get open. You just do. I don't care how good the QB is. If you don't get open, they're not going to throw it to you. And, Puka was a prime example last year. I was not one of the people. I didn't see the level of talent, but there was a lot of people that really believed and saw that talent. Same thing with Tank Dell. And even though in both of those situations, we didn't know Cooper Kupp was going to have all the injury stuff that he did, but we were thinking Puka might get 1-2 games, right? And then it would be the Cooper Kupp show, and he ended up, having as much targets as anybody. Tank Dell, even with Nico Collins, emerged before he got injured as basically the Texans' number one receiver. And again, a lot of people were really high on those guys, and they weren't even probably the top 5-6 wide receivers in rookie drafts last year. So if you have a gut like my guys, Lad McConkey this year, I watched him at UGA. I know that he, the QB play's been okay, but he's a true outside wide receiver. And if you look at most of these other stud receivers, especially outside those top three, they played in the slot so much, and it's going to be so important for these guys to be able to play on the outside and beat guys one-on-one. And that's why I think Lad's going to be somebody that adjusts really well, and he would terrify me if he went to Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. I just think that would be a really scary connection.
Yeah, and where you're talking about, with running backs, it's not going to be a 1-for-1 thing, but it can be close depending on the situation where the backup kind of comes in and maybe takes 60% of the carries. That's not the case for wide receivers. So that's where, to Keith's point before, you're more on the talent. You're more on the guys at the CeeDee Lambs, where they're out there in 2 wide receiver sets and then kicking the slot in 3 wide receiver sets. Same with Chris Godwin, same thing. Cooper Kupp, same thing. So you want those guys, those versatile guys, for Green Bay, the scheme versatile guys. All 3 of those wide receivers, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, they can play every single XYZ spot on the field where they can kind of mix and match. Now, we'll see what happens with Watson, but right now it seems like they've got a 3 with them trusting Wicks a lot more than Watson right now. But so you want to trust the talent a lot more with the wide receivers, I feel like, especially, we're seeing it was only 5 years ago where we're still taking 10 first-round running backs, and now we're looking at 3 running backs are getting taken, in the first kind of 12
If
picks.
it's not CMC, you couldn't pay me to take a running back. And
I'll take Breece Hall happily. You give me 107, 108.
Well, that's fair. If he drops that, I'm assuming that he's going to.
That's about his ADP right now.
Okay.
It's 107, 108, which is a good price.
Yeah, that's a good price.
I just want to quickly shout out all 115 of you who are consistently watching this stream over on X. Thank you very much for supporting us here at Fantasy and Frames and on Fantasy Football Weekly. But don't forget to give our YouTube channel some love. Head over there, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you're notified whenever we drop awesome fantasy football content. Nate, let's switch it over to a little IDP when we're talking about value. Okay. Chris Burns, aka Dynasty Deviant over on X, one of our Fantasy and Frames family members. We did this, episode a couple months ago now. We were trying to find some kind of correlation to fantasy performance and some type of like metric.
Mhm.
And ultimately, what we ended up discovering was it all comes down to snaps. It all comes down to opportunity. You can mask poor efficiency with high volume, right? And I guess you can kind of say that that's kind of similar to offense in certain situations. With that being the case, is there any one position, whether it's defensive back, linebacker, or defensive lineman, that you're focusing on landing spot versus talent, more than the other?
Huh. Pretty tricky, because I think we've seen that even with talent and draft capital, look at like Jack Campbell in Detroit. You and I both know talent was not a concern for Jack Campbell going into that defense. And yet someone like Alex Anzalone, who many of us would agree maybe might not be the most talented linebacker on the field,
Alex Anzalone.
Yeah. And I would love to take him and put him in cement shoes and drop him off the into the East Bay. But
wow,
that is Alex Anzalone.
Nice hair though. As someone that doesn't have it.
It's very wavy. It's very wavy.
It is.
Yeah.
Many have good linebackers with great hair. Clay Matthews had excellent hair, but Clay Matthews was a good player. So
they've also been Head and Shoulders commercials, and he has.
Hey, well,
he seems
Jack
like more
Campbell
of a Vidal
was,
that's what's missing.
Like, yes, me.
Yes, he does seem like a Vidal Sassoon. Jack Campbell was head and shoulders better than the other linebackers on the team, but yet still didn't crack, I would say, significant playing time until later in the season. And that's I think that it's easier. No offense to the offensive versus the defensive player. I get it. You have to learn a playbook regardless. But I think the idea to come in and not have such a negative detriment by having to get up to speed with the playbook is more noticeable on the defensive side. A linebacker who is out of position is going to do more harm to the team most likely than a receiver that runs a wrong route. Now, you and I both know, we all know, it can happen. It can lead to a turnover, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The possibilities are endless. But to answer your question, I would say that I still think that linebacker is the one where talent, because I think the talented player on the defensive ends and defensive tackles are going to get there. And from an IDP standpoint, come on, we know that I'm not focused on defensive tackles, even if they're going to jump right in. And defensive ends, it's usually based off of draft capital, when they have succeeded, not too many 4th and 5th round defensive ends come into the league and make a significant IDP impact. I'm sure I'll get called out for a few of them as soon as I don't have that in front of me.
People got way too much time on their hands. They're calling you out about that.
I don't disagree.
Want to give a shout out quickly to Jack in the YouTube chat. Thank you for switching over. Got Jerry also joining us. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right, so we covered some offense, we covered some IDP when it comes to reality versus fantasy. Let's get into one of our last topics for today's show: prospect fatigue, and really, you're seeing this at the quarterback position more so than any other. Drake May. Let's talk about Drake May, Jaden Daniels, now JJ McCarthy. I think Mel Kiper was saying on today's show with Field Yates that, Drake May and JJ McCarthy, they're now going hand in hand. And for those who are unaware of why JJ McCarthy is climbing up draft boards, is because the more they dig into his, short sample size of, passing plays or his advanced metrics, the guy's pretty good. I mean, he just wasn't asked to do much at that quarterback position consistently during his time at Michigan. But he did enough, but that's, I don't know.
No, I agree. I'm sorry, I was smiling because I'm thinking about some of the QB play I watched last year for these teams and understand completely why they're going, man, JJ McCarthy would be quite an improvement to what we've had for the last year at QB. So, I mean, I get it. My buddy tried to talk me into it for the Falcons. And I mean, if we get another answer for this year, it could take him. I love it. But I do think that there still is there's a group. I think it's the top 3. And I do think McCarthy could end up being really good, but I think the chances are significantly less than those top 3 guys. And that's a lot of capital to be the team that's going to jump up and take that 4th QB or be ballsy enough to take a QB that pretty much everybody universally says is behind Drake May before him, because the next thing you know, maybe you're taking Mitch Trubisky when Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes are in the class. You know what I mean?
But and then when you're talking about quarterbacks, like the quarterback industrial complex, we all know is very, very bad at ranking these quarterbacks. Like if you have a gut feeling on a guy, like I couldn't tell you about the nuts and bolts of like all these quarterbacks as a not prospect guy, I wait till the week before the draft to really do my big time research here. But if you have a feeling on a guy, Desmond Ridder, I mean, you waited till the third round to grab that guy, and now we're already replacing him. Like, if you have a feeling, just go get the guy. Kind of, if you have the pick at 8, be damned, just get the guy.
So let me ask you guys another question, and Kevin, we'll go back to you. Who does prospect fatigue impact more? People who just are the, NFL scouts, or the fantasy community as a whole?
I mean, it affects everybody differently. I would say, like I said, as somebody who, I'm obviously very well versed in the fantasy space, but I'm not a prospect guy by any, stretch of the imagination. I'm already a little fatigued. The one thing I really do want to see, and I take probably more stock in than anything, is pro days. Like we talked last week, me and Keith, when had a nice soliloquy about how the combine, we just can't stand that entire process. Running in shorts, in a straight line. Like, cool, Xavier Worthy ran a 4.22.
It's like field day in middle school.
Like, if that dude can run a 4.22 in a straight line on every play, like, that dude's going to be money. But that's not what he's going to be doing in the NFL unless you're, I guess, John Ross or Marcus Valdes-Scantling, I guess. But, I'm a little fatigued, and I can't imagine people are tuned out right now because you got spring training, you got NBA, you got NHL. People aren't, if you're locked in, you're really enjoying this too. You're really enjoying this whole process. So I don't think the fatigue hits you harder, but I can understand when you start getting into April and ESPN's beat you over the head about Caleb Williams and Jane Daniels and Drake May. I get that 100%. Like, maybe I'm just ornery in my almost 40 years old of age. Like, where
in your
I'm
defense, you've seen 1,000 mock drafts on Twitter, I'm sure, in the last.
I hate mock drafts too.
I hate them too. It's like
a great pickle race
about it, right? Yeah, exactly. Like, at least
you throw a bunch of pickles at the wall. You see what comes down on the thing. It's like the scene from Happy Gilmore? Or no, it's Billy Madison. We're throwing pickles at the restaurant wall. That's a mock draft. Cool. You took Drake May second. Get that clout. Get that X clout. Cool.
Nate?
That is actually a really good point, because that's exactly what it comes down to, is the majority of the people that are quick to say JJ McCarthy at the number 2, or someone wants to say, oh, just wait, Joe Milton's going to come in and he's going to be a 4th round pick and he's going to have, and when that person succeeds, because it's proven. We don't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. I think that's the overarching theme of everything, is we try and we fail. The difference is that we collectively, the 4 of us, if I'm wrong because I think Drake May is going to be better for Washington than Jorge you do, whatever the case may be, whatever our disagreement may be, I won't lose my job because I'm wrong. The NFL scouts, on the other hand, will. And that seems to be every year. I don't know without looking. I would be hard pressed to believe that the order of the top 3 quarterbacks have finished in terms of, I don't want to say talent or success, because success is such a weird gradient, but very rarely are there multiple hits within the first, I'd say in the first round every single year. I think there's
it's
more
like
misses.
40% in the first round for the last 15 years. There's an article on the Ringer that what
atrocious.
They said is success is like, at least I think a 500 winning percentage or more touchdowns, a certain amount of passing yards. But I still also think that the reason we talk about this so much is because until you have a quarterback, you're fucked in the NFL.
Yeah,
and you have
no
chance. Ask the Falcons. We had Matt Ryan. All he did was bitch about the poor bastard. And then the minute he leaves, again, I can't remind people, Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota, Taylor Heineke, welcome to hell. Like, that's what it's like when you don't have the dude. It sucks.
I can
just keep taking to what Kevin was saying until you get it right. Why not?
Like, trust me, I'm right with you there. As a Packers fan, I had 6 months in the last 32 years where we have not had a quarterback.
Isn't it awesome?
It was something. I don't know if awesome's the word I want to use.
I'm saying
but...
I only have 6 months. It's like most franchises will go 32
right.
years between.
Yeah, like I'll tell my kids about the Seneca Wallace experiment. For,
wow, that is taking it back. I haven't heard that name in forever. He played on like almost every single team. I feel it was the Browns, the Seahawks for a while. That's
yeah. He was the definition of a journeyman quarterback for sure. But yeah, like we don't know shit about fuck.
100%. Yeah, don't know shit about fuck. Exactly. We're gonna make T-shirts that has that on the front. You know how folks out there in the fantasy football space, how you avoid prospect fatigue? Wait to draft after the NFL draft. Like I think sometimes the fantasy community gets in its own way in trying to be the first person to say, oh, well, I was first in on this person before they landed X where, and look at how successful they're. Like, why do you care? Like what does that do to help, the people who are listening to your advice, or what does that do to help you as a content creator other than just trying to give you some perceived clout? And then you get too far in the weeds when you're trying to figure out how to, create content or to consume content.
They smoke some weed or get caught in the weeds? Because I was okay with one of the. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
No, we're good, and this is exactly what you'll find here on Fantasy Football Weekly, completely uncensored, saying whatever the goddamn hell we want.
Can I say one thing real quick about fatigue before we move on? I'm so disappointed in you guys and so many people on Twitter that I hear so much about this QB class, this wide receiver class, and it's going to take the guy that's like 135 pounds soaking wet to say, can we talk about this incredible offensive line class? There is like 10 prospects that universally from all the most respected scouts are like top 30 or 40 guys in this class. Like if you're a team that is struggling, to find an offensive line, like if you need a rebuild or if you just need to find an anchor, there is like 6-7 really good tackles in this. And there's some like dominant interior offensive line. I saw Jackson Power Johnson at the Senior Bowl, and you watch that dude for 2 minutes. I'm like, you could convince me he should be like a top 5, top 10 pick. He dominated everybody. He looked like a man playing with kids. And I mean, there's again, 10, 12 guys in the top 50 of most prospects, and nobody wants to talk about it. I understand we're fantasy offensive linemen don't get any fantasy points, but like for a team like my Falcons, that our offensive line's been at best the last decade, I'm hoping we definitely get one of these guys because there's legit 6-7 potential like stud left tackles just in this draft class.
Yeah, the top 3 or 4 teams that are capable of drafting one of the Joe Alts, the Fashanus, the J.C. Lathams of the world are 3 teams like the Giants, the Titans, your Falcons, the Jets, and yet the fan bases for those respective teams, if they took an offensive lineman, while the smart players, the smart fans should see that as a cornerstone development build, many will say the Giants, who are they going to protect? What do they need to protect if you don't have playmakers around? What do they need to do? What is Tennessee going to? And it's kind of a shame because that's always been a long-standing tradition, is that you build a proper football team from the inside out. But it's not going to make too many fantasy football conversations or exciting conversations until you have Penei Sewell on your team and you go,
exactly.
Oh yeah, that's helpful.
Jared Goff's a lot better now, huh?
Oh,
imagine
shit.
that.
Yeah.
I will
should have been Chase. Sorry.
I will say, as a Commanders fan here, I am of the proponent of stockpiling draft picks because there's so many holes on this team. One area where I'm not as concerned is the duo of McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. You mentioned Joe Alt. I would be perfectly fine with them kicking the can down the road, which is something that the Washington fan base has hated under the Ron Rivera regime. They can't stand it. They're desperate to get that franchise quarterback and get that media market going. Where someone like me, I'm like, no, yeah, let's get like a good left tackle because ours just retired, so we probably need to get a new one, and let's get some draft capital And then what happens in the second round? We get a Michael Penix who comes in and competes with Sam Howell. Like I feel like, man, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, but it's almost like, again, going back to fantasy versus reality. I think sometimes the line is blurred a little bit too much, and we kind of have to take a step back and realize, like, what are we assessing and what are we assessing for? I do want to shout out Drew Scott, aka at Drew3MR. You can find him on Fourth and Frames, one of our podcasts here at Fantasy and Frames on Fantasy and Frames Wednesdays. And we were talking about in our little chat about Caleb Williams, about how people are like getting down on him because he didn't participate in the combine. He didn't release his medical reports. He cried after a game last year. He paints his nails.
Is he going to compete?
Sorry.
Let me ask you, Caleb, how do you feel about being a pussy? That was pretty much what that guy asked the first question. I'm like, oh my God, dude, like for real.
I'm glad you just said that, because Dustin Lutke was actually a guest on Fourth and Frames a couple of days ago, and Chris Battistel, the host there, just at the beginning of the show, credit to him and how he handled it. Just said,
yeah,
all right, let's get the elephant out of the room. How was your experience as a combine? And Dustin just completely went into football. He completely bypassed the question for Caleb Williams. And for me personally, and I know this is a polarizing topic amongst people in the fantasy community, for me personally, I'm kind of glad that happened, because I'm tired of talking about the bullshit. Like, talk about, I want to hear about like what is viable. And Dustin knows his stuff. He knows his stuff. He's very good at breaking down performances. He studies the NFL. He's a fan of the NFL. I think sometimes there is an overreaction to how one person can completely decimate the reputation of an entire, industry, so to speak, versus him just kind of maybe decimating a little bit of his shine. So that's where my thoughts were.
His explanation made a lot of sense. I like, from what I saw, he said that, look, there was 100 freaking people there, and I was trying to ask something that I knew would get answered. So from that point of view, I can't blame him. I do wish he would have asked it a little bit more respectful, because to me it came across as like, hey, I'm going to be an asshole and see if you answer. But I mean, it also, I'm sure, was his first experience. I'm sure he was nervous. I know I would have been. I went to the Senior Bowl and I was nervous talking to those guys, and there was no cameras or anything in front of me. So, I mean, it's a learning experience. I just got a kick out of it, because to me, I was waiting for somebody to do like, a meme or something of it. Because basically that's what he asked him. He's like, what do you think about people saying you're a bitch? Like, that's pretty much, like what he asked him, which is great.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say my voice would have gone like this if I was asking a question.
Well, now that's actually what I was going to say. Is I sent a message to Dustin. As all that was going down the other day, and I told him, look, 98% of the people that are commenting on that video would have shit themselves silly, with the opportunity to ask a question like that. And yeah, you can say what you want about how we ask the question, but it's a tough question. And, you don't get a lot of that. How many softballs you think all these athletes get? And, they get to dictate their own kind of narrative. He kind of forced that upon them. And, like I said, you can say what you want about how he asked it, but I don't mind the question at all. And, it's a learning experience. Like he said, you're going to take this, you're going to learn from it. You're going to figure out maybe, coming at it with a different approach.
And I guarantee you, Dustin got a bunch of new followers and a bunch of likes and stuff. And that's not a bad thing, because he does good work. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to judge somebody on, like, quote unquote, their worst moment. This isn't even that big of a deal. I just thought it was hilarious, because at the end of the day, it's basically like, if you wanted to put the whole question into like just one phrase, it's like, why are you a bitch?
Big shout out to Dustin, by the way. He was the MVP of our Kings Classic Jim Brown auction draft, putting in all those picks at the Expo and at the Hall of Fame. Him and Kevin Murray doing all the behind the scenes, getting everything on the big old board there. He was the MVP. Him and Kevin were the MVPs of that entire draft. So, I love Dustin. I think he's a great guy. Kind of sucked to kind of see how he was getting treated, how he was getting all the backlash. But, you could take a positive from
That's
any
all clout
experience.
chasing. Everybody though that is either commenting or retweeting it or whatever, they're trying to get clout off
piling
of his
on.
clout. No, they're trying to literally take his clout that he got from that moment and get a piece of it. And that's what sometimes drives me crazy in like the Twitter / X.
And how many people forgot about it? Like by now,
literally
everybody
but me, except for
I mean, except for us four. We're talking about it right now.
Do we all think Caleb Williams is like that can't miss guy though? Like, do we think he's in that Manning?
Okay, so
because that's what I want to know.
So this I'm glad you brought that up because that's circling back to what I was mentioning earlier about giving Drew Scott some props because we were talking about how I talked about Caleb Williams and he was talking about how all the criticism with him is the crying, painting his nails, yada yada yada. But and a lot of people in the fantasy space bring that up also. And it's one thing if like you're an NFL scout or NFL personality talking about, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. I don't care if you're an NFL personality. I don't care if you're a fantasy personality. I could give two shits about whether or not he paints his nails or cries after a loss or whatever. Not participating in the combine, good for him. Not divulging his medicals.
Competitive.
Like good for him.
Think Kobe Bryant didn't cry. That dude was the most competitive athlete that I can think of, and I'll bet you anything that dude probably cried over a loss because nobody is on his level of competitiveness.
No, exactly, and so like at this point, it goes back to prospect fatigue. Like, are we so desperate to find information that we'll just start picking at anything and everything to kind of devalue a player? And I think that's exactly what that is.
Society. We want to build people up so then we can fucking tear them down because that's what happens is you get so much good press, whether you're an actor, an activist, whatever. And then the haters come out, right? Like, and they're like, no, I can't see all this good stuff being said about someone. And then next thing you know, they start nitpicking at you. And that's what it is with Caleb Williams, in my opinion, is like, to me, and I've heard several really smart scouts say, a little Mahomesy. Nobody has said if he's 80% of Mahomes, you know how fucking good that's going to be? So, like, that's enough for me just looking at also the throws he's made. I believe that he was a little more reckless this year because their team sucked. His defense was horrible. He knew I got to make every throw. We're going to lose every game. Like, that's just the way it is. You go back to last year, nobody was questioning. This dude was a slam dunk number one. God, everybody wanted this pick. And the fact the Bears are not, budging despite they're going to get a like all-time haul to me shows he is like the next in that line of kind of can't miss guys. I'm just worried we missed the last one because I said the same thing about Trevor Lawrence and 3 years later I'm not so sure.
Yeah. I love how your camera is like freezing at certain moments and your mouth is shut, but you are just like going on and I love it because it gives a great visual. I agree with all what you guys are saying. Let's wrap up the show though, as we have last week. I should say, like we always do. This is our second week doing the show, so thank you all again. Now, all 140 of you who have been tuning in for all of the programming, and let's go around and just talk about what we're going to be up to this weekend. Any fun plans, anything in general, something that's been going on in your life that you want to talk about. Really, it's whatever you want to talk about. And Nate, we haven't heard from you in a bit. Why don't we start with you, sir?
It's baseball draft weekend, so I've got focused baseball. In fact, actually, here in about 5 minutes, I have 15 minutes, I guess.
What round are you taking my boy Jameson Tyon in?
Probably
50th?
gonna let. I'm done doing 50 round picks, 50 round drafts. But I did like Jameson Tyon 7-8 years ago as a.
All right, I'll text him right now. Let you know you're slandering him.
I just don't have a position for a. I don't even know exactly how many innings he is likely to pitch this year.
Give him $160, $170.
You think so?
Give him 10 wins. Give him 150. Give him 140 strikeouts.
Okay,
he'll be fine. Let him eat some innings.
I hope so. It hasn't been something that, prior, like I was worried after 2018, then it was like 2019, then it was, if he gets to 150, 160, I'm thrilled. If he can keep the ERA under 4.5, that's serviceable. Yeah. And the team is probably not going to, they're in a good opportunity to be competitive. Not the most difficult division, but we will see. So yes, I probably won't. I don't have any shares of Jameson Tyon yet. Maybe that will change, and if that happens, I will let you know immediately.
Please do.
Kevin, what are you getting into this weekend?
Not a damn thing. Honestly, I mean, I'm doing some. I'm just doing like literal spreadsheet nerddom stuff, working on like wide receiver metrics and stuff like that, and then just looking forward to seeing what's going on with free agency, because I'm excited to see Zach Moss become a Los Angeles Charger. And I'm also very excited.
Bowers there too, get drafted. All of a sudden, that offense looking pretty good.
I'm excited to see Gabe Davis become a Kansas City Chief.
Shut your dirty
for the lulz.
Yeah,
I hear that one more time from seeing that.
He did have his best game ever there, right? So
technically, yeah.
Pass.
Yep. Wait.
I got nothing.
Hey, can we talk about real quickly before we get out of here these dumbass Chiefs fans that are having to get body parts amputated because they went to the Dolphins game? What's up with that, Nate?
Yeah, well, when you're a winning team and you don't play in a pussy ass dome, that's what happens.
Dome, you want to go sit out with it being cold enough that your foot has to get amputated potentially?
Yes.
What is wrong with you people?
What is quite possibly?
What is going on?
So let's see. Green Bay Packers have maybe the most storied history. They play outside, and they're in maybe what I would consider the second coldest area of any stadium, maybe first. Buffalo's right up there with them, I would say. And you have all these great teams that win Super Bowls, like the Atlanta Falcons that play in a dome, don't get shit done. The Saints have won, so the Saints are much better than the Falcons.
Regardless of what we're saying, I'm saying, have you sat inside a dome when it's 70 degrees, whether it's 100 degrees outside or 20 degrees outside? I guarantee it feels a lot better than cold enough to get your foot amputated. That is insane. I question
the intelligence of those individuals. Why
are these the ones that are trying to get on TV by not wearing a shirt too?
Because they allowed you. They allowed people to bring in cardboard to stand on. They allowed people to. They made a lot of different rules. Well, look at At the
Do
same
they have
time,
the typical the seats and the seat backs? Because I know Lambeau has the benches, the metal benches.
It's a regular
that
seat.
Can be brutal.
It's just the concrete. All the cold comes through. That's why they have the.
Put those.
You hear about what the Bills did?
They shoes.
They cleaned up all the snow except for the visitor section.
Exactly.
So when those fans showed up, they're watching going to their seat. Yeah, they're up to the freaking waist. No, thank you. I'm out. I need it to be a little warmer than that.
Keith, what are you getting into this weekend?
Well, apparently, thanks to Xfinity always texting me, my wife just rented Elizabeth the Golden Age, so I have that to look forward to at some point this weekend for $3.99. It's my birthday Sunday. So
happy early birthday.
I'm at the age
21st.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. I was going to say, I don't even like talking about my birthday because I'm old and it's just this is depressing. But I think I did come up with an idea finally. Is my wife makes amazing banana pudding and we're having family and friends over tomorrow night. No banana pudding tomorrow. I said, I don't want it. I don't want all these moochers and family and friends members eating my banana pudding. So she's making a Butterfinger cake for tomorrow night. And then Sunday, once we get all these suckers out of here, she's going to make banana pudding that just me and her are going to eat. So that I am looking very forward to. And then obviously maybe catching up on SmackDown, which I missed tonight.
Touche. I second the SmackDown catching up on coverage. I'm just going to tomorrow morning finish up some of the content that we got here coming out at fantasyandframes.com articles. If you didn't check out America 108 on X, you didn't check out her Dynasty Bartender article for NFL free agency, go read it. It's fantastic. She's basically comparing buy, sells, and holds to drinks that you can get at a bar. It is fantastic. Look out for her TikTok coming out tomorrow as well as plenty of other articles that our content creators here at Fantasy and Frames are putting out. aside from that, I got my. I was supposed to meet up with Michael Bauer of the Dynasty Rewind. He lives in Pennsylvania. I live just outside of DC, and so every year we kind of like find like a halfway point to meet. And for some reason, we decided on Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where there's nothing but Amish farms, a few restaurants, and some shopping outlets. And maybe in hindsight, not the greatest decision, but it was a place that was kind of equidistant. Anyhow, it's supposed to rain, so we had to reschedule, which is unfortunate. But my father-in-law is coming down, and he's a big person who just likes to watch all sorts of YouTube videos. And I was telling him that for some reason recently, I've been getting into watching a lot of survival videos, like how to make a shelter under like adverse conditions. And I want to shout out for those who haven't watched or those who might be interested. There is a YouTube channel called The Outdoor Boys, where it's really just this one guy, tall, lanky guy, really super nerdy, but he has glasses, so I automatically like him. And this guy makes like snow shelters. Like literally they're out of snow, and he digs like 10 deep into the snow, 10 feet deep into the snow, carves out these shelters. Like it is amazing.
Why are these people all outside when it's that cold? Like, have they not heard of indoor and heating? And
no, but see, he even found a way to make a shelter and to sleep overnight without a tent, without a sleeping bag. He literally basically remove the snow from the ground, make sure all the water or ice got dried out, and then he had like coals on one side of the area, and then he moved it to his sleeping space, and then put like the soot and stuff and all the gravel on top of the coals, and it gave a temperature of like 70 degrees, and he slept on that. Like that's what he slept on overnight in like the wilderness in like really cold conditions. It's like shit like that I'm just like, I will never do that, but that sounds like it looks cool to watch, I guess.
Get a big ass camper, Jorge, and you
guys,
can
I gotta run.
So much cooler than that.
All right, Nick Markham. But that's going to do it for us.
His ass off. It took a little while, an hour and 6 minutes. But
now we can really begin.
That's right.
Anywho, thank you all very much for watching Fantasy Football Weekly today. We will be back at our usual time next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So for Kevin, for Keith, I am Jorge, and you all have a great weekend.